Hello there guys and welcome to another episode of Genuine Chit-Chat. This week I'm joined by the comic book artist Paolo Villanelli. And in this episode, we talk about a great many things. We speak about what kind of a day in the life of a comic book artist. So we talk about timescales, how much conversation that the comic book artist has with the writer of the comic book, as well as how much conversation they then have with the color artists, the editors, the general sort of how much freedom they get with things. And Paolo also talks about some of the other things like, what it's like working digitally, what kind of work he really likes doing, what he doesn't generally like doing, or what he'd like to do in the future. So with me and this conversation, what I really wanted it to be was a kind of behind the scenes look into what we don't really know that much about comic book artists, and I think this conversation sheds a lot of light on those things. It was a really, really fun conversation with Paolo. I also want to add in here that Paolo did actually have quite a bad cough when we recorded. He pushed on through and I'm very thankful for that conversation to go ahead, but there is the odd time that you will hear him cough and things. On the audio only version, I managed to edit most of that out, but in the video version, most of it is still in there because I don't think it really takes away in the time it would have taken to edit. It would have been a very long time. So with obviously this video version of the conversation, it is slightly less audio clean than the audio only version, but it's still a really, really good conversation and it doesn't take away from it at all. It's like every few minutes he coughs at once. So I had a really, really good conversation with Paolo, loads of fun. And if anyone new is joining the channel or joining the show of any kind, there's a few other episodes you may want to check out. On YouTube, I put in all my stuff into playlists, so you can check out my Star Wars Comics and Canon podcast and a lot of the other sort of things I do. But there's some Star Wars centric conversations and there's a playlist in that. And just a couple of episodes to note is episode 110 when I spoke with Claudia Gray, the author. We spoke about her book. Obviously, she's a High Republic author. She's done Lost Stars, Master and Apprentice, lots of other cool things as well, and non-Star Wars stuff, which we also spoke about. Then in episode 121, I spoke with the actor Dominic Pace. He was in The Mandalorian, so it was really, really cool to chat with him. And then episode 138, I spoke with Alex and Molly of Star Wars Explained, who are some very prolific Star Wars YouTubers. So that's quite a good wide sort of look onto some of the conversations I've had in this realm. And, I've had conversations with loads of people, not about Star Wars as well. So huge subject matter to back catalogue and subject matters to check out. But yeah, just look on the channel, see what you can find. And if you feel like it deserves it, hit that like button, hit that subscribe, try and push these subscriber numbers up. But that's going to be enough from me, guys, here, or I will just ramble on. I'll let this full conversation go, and when it finishes, it will finish. I will not be at the end. But if you are listening, obviously you guys are listening on YouTube and stuff, so if you want to hear just the audio only version of this conversation and my other conversations, then just search for Genuine Chit Chat on Spotify and any of the usual places that you listen to podcasts. So with that in mind, I hope you guys enjoy this conversation, and I bring you Paolo Villanelli. There we go. So, I am joined today by Paolo Villanelli. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, Paolo. I mean, I've been admiring your work, both for Star Wars and for Marvel stuff for quite a while, and obviously you've done a lot of work for various different publishers, which it's amazing to see that your name is slowly getting wider and wider. I just think that your art style is so incredible and so interesting. So this whole conversation is just me trying to learn about it, because I am terrible at drawing. I can barely even draw stickmen. So obviously bouncing off of that sort of premise, when you were younger, have you always been, drawing? Were you always doodling in your notebook and things at school and whatnot? How did the passion for being an artist kind of start?
First of all, thank you very much, Mike, for the introduction. So basically, I started drawing since I was a very little kid. It started because my parents used to buy me comic books, so I started, looking at those comics and trying to copy the pages because all the drawings looked so crazy. I loved it, and then at some point in my life, I started, drawing things from my own imagination. And then suddenly I realized that I was going to, learn in a comic book school how to make it a job out of it, because in my head it was not possible to have a job in comics, in American comics from Italy. But I back in the day, the very first Italian artists were starting to show up in the American market, like. Camuncoli or Di Giandomenico, the very first Italian invasions in American comics started during the early 2000s. And so I realized that it could be done. So I started talking with some friends, and I realized that I could actually, take some classics, learning something more specific. And I had great teachers, and I made it. At some point, I was doing comics, and it was
Amazing.
pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, so have you just always been, because you're in Italy right now, have you always been
Mhm.
based in Italy for the entirety of your sort of comic and artistry career?
Yeah, yes. Basically, I've always stayed in Italy. Meanwhile, before doing comics, I actually took a degree in
Hmm.
economics because I was not sure about what to do with my life. So I took kind of a break from
Wow.
from comic. And so I traveled a while. I stayed in England for a while,
Hmm.
working in different places, and then I came back to Italy, and I realized I wanted to do comics.
Wow.
But I mainly stayed in Italy.
Yeah, wow, that's really cool. Obviously, good for me. Obviously, England is so much closer to Italy because my girlfriend is Italian, so her family,
Yes.
I call them the mountain folk because they're from Bergamo, so they're right near Lake Garda, so they're just
Yes.
all hidden in the mountains. They're
Yep.
pasty, and there's like no
That's
tan
true.
at all. Lovely people, great food, but yeah, no skin complexion at all.
And they drink a lot.
Yes, always, that was the surprising thing. It was just like always just wine with every meal. It was just wine and espressos. That was it with lovely food, which was
Yes.
great. It's great fun going on a holiday over there. Um, so I wanted to ask, when it comes to comics and artistry and things, say a day in the life of Paolo Villanelli. So do you do you do like 8 hours a day, Monday to Friday? Do you can you do less or more than that? How much do you generally work, or as much as your employers think you do? Because you can just in case.
Yes. I hope nobody at Marvel is listening now. No. Well, it depends. I mean, when I started and I was, trying to get as much work as I could, have, I used to work like 7 days a week, like 10 to 12 hours. It was crazy. And it's something that I now tell some of my students because I started teaching as well,
Oh wow.
comics. I try to tell, do not do that. At some point, it's just bad for you.
Hmm.
It actually your art gets sloppy, and if your objective is just to have your name in the comic book stands, um, that's not the right way. It's true you'll have a lot of publications, but then the quality of your art will just lack in some way. Uh, so right now I try to keep it to Monday to Saturday, and basically about, yes, 8 hours like any other job. Um, the good thing is that I can actually, uh, you know, uh, move my work schedule depending on my needs. If I have to take a weekend off, go somewhere, I can adjust things, and I always try to keep 2 to 3 days before deadline to
Hmm.
finish my project because I know that something is gonna happen and it's gonna shit my plans and and so I try to. Sometimes it's good because I finish early and I'm just taking a break, relaxing. Sometimes just I use those days to go back on the pages and fix some stuff I'm not happy with.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's usually the 6 days a week, 8 hours, uh, no more or less.
Wow.
Sometimes less if I get lucky, it's less. Sometimes there are those days that you can't really make the page work and you're stuck, so you have to give up and move on, and so you wasted loads of time. But that happens to everyone, I guess.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, my job is nowhere near as exciting as yours. I work in insurance, so it's not exciting dealing with claims and things. Which is
Yeah.
yeah. So when it comes to like doing artwork and things with your comics, so do you do it in a linear order? So do you do the first? Because obviously you get the script from the writer. Do you just go start to finish, or do you do some of the more tasking things like big fights and stuff? Is there an order that you generally do it in?
Um, that as well depends on the script. sometimes I usually that depends on the writers as well. Lately, worked now it's 2 years. I've been working with Ethan Sachs,
Hmm.
and he's always got me of a full script. When I get a full script, it's fine. I just have to start from page one and so on. And it's good because I can actually start to visualize the full story from the very beginning. Sometimes you don't get there are things going on, and so you get off of the script and so on. So that depends. Sometimes because lately Ethan has started giving me a lot of freedom for all the action sequence. So you get like page 5 to 7. Paolo, these two characters have to fight. You can do whatever you like.
Yeah.
Those pages, yeah, that sounds really cool until you get on the page and you realize that, oh my God, now what's going to happen now? And so you start realizing, I don't know, I don't have enough pages. There are too many panels, there are too few. And so in those cases, sometimes I try to, keep those pages for the last part of the deadline because I want to, work on stuff that's more complicated, that needs more backgrounds at the beginning when I'm still, quite rested. And because every time you get to the end of the project, it's always going to be the part where you are just tired and you want to see the end of a comic book. And so you start to get, a little bit sloppier and you're like, maybe I'm not going to draw all those, pouches on some that character. I don't know. But that depends on the script. Sometimes if I know that for that month, I got lots of stuff to do, not just regarding comics. Maybe I got, I don't know, maybe I got stuff to do, or maybe I got commissions, or I got covers. I try to keep some pages that I think are going to be easier for me for the very end, because I know that they're going to help me if I'm getting late. Or also, if I have a double page, that I try to squeeze it in a one day. That means that I'm actually saving time.
Hmm.
But it depends. There are loads of factors, but I remember that one of my teachers at this comic school told me that he used to start um, from the first 5 pages and the last five, because those are the pages that a reader are going to remember.
Oh.
The part in the middle, yeah, you just want to go on reading and get to the end of a comic book, so you're not really paying attention. But the very first and the very last are always the pages that are gonna stick in the mind of a reader. I try to keep that in mind now because I still think it's a sound advice.
Yeah, that's something I hadn't really considered, but it makes sense, yeah. Because when you get a new comic and the first thing you open to and you see that, especially with things as iconic as Star Wars, and then when you're like, oh, I can't wait for the next issue, and you look at that last panel and it's like, I need more, and so that's the thing that people
Exactly.
stare at. So that's very good advice, very, very clever. And yeah, of interest with someone like Ethan, because obviously you've been working with Ethan for the Bounty Hunters run, which excellent comic series, and I've been tackling that on my other show. But the out of interest, when it comes to, if we say Ethan specifically as a writer, when it comes to, obviously he lets you have freedom with certain elements like the fight scenes and things. When it comes to other elements, so for example, when there's the first panel of a comic, does he say, there has to be a skyline, there has to be this, there has to be that, or how much detail are you given in general when it comes to, obviously, the script? You know what the general plot is, but when it comes to like shots or anything like that, or are you given almost total freedom?
That depends on the setting, actually. If I remember correctly, there is those issues where Dengar and Valance are together on the pirate ship, and they're actually traveling. And that page started like, okay, Dengar and Valance. We see the pirate ship from the outside. Then we go inside. Dengar and Valance are fighting. And that was like It was basically telling me do whatever you want. But then we have the issues settled in Narshada, the smuggler's moon.
Yeah.
And those were like, we have a big opening shot of the skyline of Narshada. And that is actually saying me, we want to see the Smuggler's Moon. We
Right.
want to give a good sense of this crazy, amazing place in the Star Wars universe. So that's actually, it's basically 90% of the time is up to me, but there are definitely parts that are actually where he's actually saying we need to see a lot of stuff, we need to see a lot of detail, and even if he's not clearly telling me that, that's usually how it works.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. And also in line with that, like I'm interested as well by sort of panels and things. Because I said I've not really spoken to many artists and things. So when it comes to like the paneling as well, is that something that you as an individual have to sort? Is that something that say Marvel say, oh, it has to be in this kind of general structure? Do you get quite a bit of freedom for it? How's the paneling work?
Um, I I actually never had many directions or guidelines on that. What I have is basically the structure that the writer tells me. So it's just page one, page two, 5 panels, 4 panels. What I can do is actually reading the script. If you realize that there is something that, as a visual artist, I can make work without a panel or with an extra panel, I usually tell the editor and the writer, look, this is what the page looks like. And I give them options. I draw the page as just layouts, of course. I give them the option with straight from the script, and then I give them my idea. And that usually ends with a nice discussion about it, because it's something that many writers most of the writers are cool with. I mean, they know that the artists are there just to give the visual input, so they're perfectly fine with seeing what their scene actually looks like in a more practical way.
Yeah.
So,
And it must be like as like a comic run, because I know that obviously you've done one-off issues and you've also done some of the mini-series, things like, Lando Double or Nothing, which was excellent as well. You've really, it looks exact same. Like when you see even just the covers, you open that up and you see all of the artwork inside, you could immediately like that see it's Lando. So kudos to you for that. But obviously with a mini-series where you've only got a few issues to do, or compared to something like Bounty Hunters, which obviously is an ongoing series. I think at the moment we're on issue like 16, 17-ish. We're in the middle of the War of the Bounty Hunters crossover event, which is mental. So with like the ongoing series, do you find that with Bounty Hunters, it's a bit easier once you kind of get into it? So now that you're on probably issue 20 or whatever, what you're doing now, is it easier because, you've done the characters, a lot of them before, you kind of know the general vibe that Ethan is going for? Would you say that that's generally easier for the ongoing series than it is for either limited series or one issues?
well, that's definitely easier, because one thing that happens whenever you draw comics is that when you start doing a series or a mini, the first time you draw a character is definitely not going to look like the last page, because you learn something while drawing all those pages, all those action scenes, all those emotion reactions, and it's just very it's very clear that the very first issues are not going to look like the last ones. And in this sense, Bounty Hunters has proven easier on the long run, because of course I had 17 issues so far to work on those characters. The tricky part is that we got a huge cast of characters, and every issue we have to put something new inside. I blame Ethan for this. every time there's like, okay, we're gonna need a new character for this scene, and I'm like, oh my god, another one. But it's fun because you have a chance to make things for the Star Wars universe, and it's since this is not part of the main storyline, we're not meddling with a Jedi or Sith, so we don't care about those people. We just want good blaster fights, and so these characters are actually they have a higher degree of freedom when we create them. They are not very relevant to the main story. So Lucasfilm actually gives us a lot of freedom, and it's actually great because you have a chance to do stuff uh, easy in a
Yeah.
very easy way.
Yeah, I can imagine because obviously you did, I think it was the Age of Republic special, quite a while ago and things. And obviously the Age of series are all tackling, especially Republic, it's prequel era. So you have to make everyone look in this specific thing. You
Yeah,
can't really have anyone like die or anything crazy. It's just a little insulated story.
exactly.
Whereas obviously with Bounty Hunters, you've got the heavy hitters. You've got, Boba Fett, you've got Bosk, you've got those sort of people who, certain ones, because Bounty Hunters is set between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, obviously Boba Fett can't die because he's in Return of the Jedi. But when you've got a character like Bela Valance, who, although they were in Legends a little bit, and I wasn't aware of him being in Legends until I read Bounty Hunter. So I was like, this guy's really cool. He's a cyborg. Let's look up more info on him. And I was like, oh, he was back in like the 70s and the 80s when it was really crazy, off the wall stuff. So with obviously characters like him, who you can basically do anything because aside from the small amount of Legends history, which obviously isn't canon anymore, he's basically a comic character because he started off in Han Solo Imperial Cadet, then he was in Target Vader, and now he's obviously at the helm of his own series, which is, it's incredible. So when it comes to, creating characters, are you told, like, about the species? So, for example, in Bounty Hunters, especially in the first volume or so, there's a Nakano Lash, who is a Nautolan. So, for people listening, the best comparison I'll do is Kit Fisto. That's the, with the tentacles and things, he's great. And it's my girlfriend's favourite, like a Jedi, actually, funnily enough. So, when I saw Nakano Lash, I was like, oh, it's a female Nautolan and things. Did Ethan say to you, oh, it needs to be a female Nautolan, or did he say it's just a character, kind of do what you want with? Like, I'm interested in that realm of, do you get to choose the species, or is that more to the writer?
That as well depends on what Ethan is planning. For Nakano, Ethan had this idea from the very beginning that she was going to be an Nautolan. For other characters, it was actually open to discussion. So we actually had a chance to pitch different ideas and to say, you know what, we're gonna go for a different alien-looking characters. Now we're gonna make them human and so on. And it was actually funny because, I think it's in issue 14 or something when they are on Ashad again, and the Dengar is actually taking balance to the older woman, the old mechanic. And
Yes.
that character, I was basically, okay, you can do whatever you want with this one. So I was just like, okay, whatever. She's an old woman, she's tough, and I'm gonna draw her like this old lady that runs the cafe next to my studio. So yeah, because whatever. And this is actually, so it depends on the situation. If Ethan or if Lucasfilm has already an input on the mind, I get some very directions. If not, it's actually open for discussions, and I can usually make it away with a lot of stuff. I hope so.
Well, I know that you said in one of the previous conversations I listened to of yours, it's quite exciting sometimes when you can do like stuff in the background. So it's like, okay, so in the main shot, you've got, Valance and Dengar fighting here, but they're fighting on Nar Shaddaa. We've got 2 pages of this. You can just have little things. Oh, there's a person with a market stall, and stuff like that, which is really interesting. And sort of bouncing off the elements, still obviously in the collaboration sense. Obviously, you and Ethan and the writers of the comics need to discuss things quite heavily. Now, when it comes to color artists, because obviously I wasn't aware till I started getting into primarily Star Wars comics and things. I was just like, oh, there's a writer and there's an artist. It's like, no, there's so many more people involved in that. When it comes to the colors, do you speak with the color artists themselves to kind of say what you think they should be, or is that the editor? Like, how does the coloring, how does it translate from what, Ethan to you to the color artists? How does that work?
That depends. Sometimes you get a chance to work with people you already know, like I did on the Bounty Hunter series. And in that case, you don't really need to, have discussed very much because completely trust in the colorist. Sometimes I just leave him, Harif Pianto, who's been my colorist so far, small notes inside my files when I send them over. they're like hidden. So when he's opening them for coloring, he gets the notes, and it's like, okay. But if not, the editors are usually very good at guiding the colors in this sense. But with Arif, I had a chance to work with him also on the Fallen Order video game prequel.
Yeah, Dark Temple. That was excellent.
And in that case, sorry.
That's all right. You're back. It's okay.
Connected? No,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. Okay, good. As I was saying, with Arif, we already had a chance to work in the past, so it was actually easier for me on Bounty Hunters. While on the Fallen Order prequel, we had to, talk a lot about stuff. But it was usually okay because we have, as I say, good editors helping us out. So it really depends on the situations, and sometimes editors don't let artists and colorists communicate that much because they're basically afraid that we're gonna waste a lot of time. So they like to take control of the thing and say, okay, you gotta do this and this, and that's pretty much it. But I always get a chance to review the colors in the end, so it's usually cool.
That's very interesting. And so, still in the same vein of illustrations, because obviously you said about you sending files over and things, and obviously we're in the digital age. That's how we're communicating. And so, back decades ago, people I assume would do everything hand drawn and then kind of send it off to the printing press and kind of go from there. So now, is it just? Do you have a I assume you have some sort of software where you have got one of those special pens and you like draw on that and it goes on the screen? I'm just interested by how, as much as you can say, almost like what vaguely software do you use, and do you find that drawing digitally is as satisfying or as easy in some ways as drawing, say, pen to paper?
Sorry.
That's fine.
So I'm actually working on a Wacom hardware machine, and I use mainly Clip Studio Paint as a software for working in comics. It's a great software, and in the last decade, it's proven to be one of the best softwares for doing comics because it's mainly studied just for comics. While other products like Photoshop are really, really demanding for your computer because it's software that's developed mainly for doing everything you have on your mind. So it's for photos, 3D, and drawing, illustration, and so it's probably it was in the past the only software, but now that Clip Studio has proven to be reliable and even better than Photoshop for some stuff, it's probably the number one software that artists use at the moment. And I think that right now there's a lot of stuff you can do digitally. So I've seen artists doing stuff that is completely out of this world digitally, and I don't think they could do that on paper. But at the same time, if you know how to do stuff on paper, you can do the same thing digitally. While the other way around is not always true.
I see. Yeah.
So it's not really 100% interchangeable. I love doing stuff on paper because it's so satisfying. It's so fun, and this is the reason why I try to save time to do covers and some of my pages on paper when I can and when I have time, because I love to have the time to have fun with all that inks and stuff and nibs and brushes because it's so crazy satisfying. Also, this is good for doing commissions because, of course, it's so interesting. You have a chance to draw stuff that you're not usually even thinking about. Sometimes they come up with ideas about some obscure characters, and they're like, "Oh, I have no idea what you're talking about." But it's okay.
That's very interesting. I mean, as I said, I'm not an artist by any stretch of the imagination, but it's like with just podcasting alone, like, you know, I'm talking to you obviously on a laptop. I've got notes. When I do my Star Wars podcast where I go through the comics and I read them and things, and I basically make annotated notes and things. It's an absolute mess, actually. It's I'll show you, and the listeners who are watching on YouTube can see as well how like unbelievably messy my notes are, where they're just like, it's horrendous. Like trying to read that is like hieroglyphics. It's mental because I think I like the freedom of it, because when I do the comics, like I read through Bounty Hunters, and that's something I'm tackling this week, and I read through it all, and any of the characters I recognise, I go, oh, you know, that's so, and obviously Bosk and Boba Fett are very, you know, iconic and things, but certain smaller characters where you go, where have I seen that guy before? And then you go, oh, he was in, you know, Empire Strikes Back or whatever. That's the general theme of my show, going through comics and talking about the connections. And I like the freedom of things on paper. I've always been someone who writes, you know, post-it notes or notebooks. I said I've got 4 notebooks here for 2 podcasts. One's for guests, one's for this, one for that. So it's all I get in a similar way. I like the physically having it on paper. And sticking with what you say about making cover art and things. Obviously, you've made some variant covers for the High Republic, and you've done some other cover work as well. I'm interested because there's so many different. If I use the High Republic as an example, High Republic #1 especially, because it was such a big thing that was launching, there were loads of variant covers. I think I've got about 8 of them. Unfortunately, I didn't get your one, which is upsetting, because your one was quite hard to get, and it's probably one of the coolest. It was, you know, a homage to Dave Filoni's one from Legends, Clone Wars, etc. But like, when it comes to especially variant covers, do you... How do they choose people? Do they just go, okay, everyone who works for Marvel, does anyone want to do a variant cover? Or do they go, okay, you, and you, can you think of something? How does the cover work, especially with variants? How's that kind of work from your end?
Yeah, I have a very vague idea about how it works, and I'm not entirely sure. So this is like my take on the subject. Okay. Okay. Sometimes they go for, you know, we want these artists because the editors say, I love his work. Okay. And that's the easy one. Mm-hmm. Then there are artists that are very famous, and so they know that the artist's name is going to sell the comic. So that's why you get Adam Hughes to draw your cover. You know, Adam Hughes is like one of the best artists for covers. Come on, he's like the best probably. And so you get him because, you know, you want to make sure that the variant cover that's going to be, you know, limited, and it's going to be sold for a higher price than the regular comic. It needs to be worth it. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it also depends on the budget of a project. Every project has a budget to cover, so with that budget you cover expenses, and sometimes you get extras. So I believe that is a factor as well. But in terms of launching a comic, of course, you try to get as many variants out there, because you need to make sure that the very first issue is going to sell a lot. A friend of mine has just started working on Moon Knight, cool. The new series. His name is Alessandro. Yeah, Alessandro Capuccio, and he's doing an amazing job. And he got the very first package with all the comps from Marvel. There were tons of variant covers. That drives the sales. So, of course, many readers jump in because it's the first issue and they want to learn more about characters. Then you got the diehard fans, which want to read these new stories. Then you got collectors, they want to see the variant covers. So that's how you drive up sales, with lots of variant covers as well.
I see.
It usually works fine. Sometimes it backfires because then you see that the second issue, as soon as you get rid of variant covers, the sales drop dramatically, and it's starting to look a little bit dire. You're like, oops, maybe we exaggerated.
Yeah, I see. And do you like is there a in the world of illustration, do you have something that is like your favorite thing to do, something you get excited about? Like, is there like, do you love doing covers and things because they're quite unique and they're quite striking, and you can, I assume, take a lot more time? I would presume, I'm not asking about the financial side of things, I would not ask those kind of questions, but like, I presume for time that you have to spend on a cover, like you get paid X amount, here's the cover, you can spend X amount of hours doing that. Whereas with a comic, it's like, yeah, you get paid, because you get paid over a longer period of time for more money, but because you have to do so many different panels and things, you maybe can't do the same level of attention to detail. So do you prefer generally doing like covers, or obviously you mentioned about commissions, people asking you to do random things, or do you quite like the serialized things like Bounty Hunters doing for comics? I'm just interested what your kind of favorite was.
Okay, if I had the same time I have for an issue for a cover, I would definitely say I love doing covers. But sometimes this is one of the reasons why you don't get many covers done by the artists of the issue.
Yeah.
They are all busy doing the pages, so they don't get that much time to do the covers. And I love telling stories. So for me, doing the pages is actually my favorite part. And even if I hate the part when I start inking, because for me, for me it's like a repetition of stuff that I already have in my mind that I already put on paper. Because I love the part where you start doing layouts and pencils and you put together your story. And so you get to study the framing of the characters and all the angles of the camera for your shots, and the action sequence, the layout, the general layout, and the use of black and white, and that kind of stuff is actually happens for me during layouts and pencils. So when you get to inking, I'm like, oh, again? Didn't I just finish that area? Come on, another time. But for me, that part is actually the best. I would love to be able to do just layouts and pencils and get away with just doing that.
Yeah.
But since I'm working digitally, I'm also forced to work in the inks as well, because it's all part of the same process for me. Inking my pages is basically just giving some definition to my lines and scribbles, because I don't think it can be called inking when you work digitally, because it's part of it. It's actually the same process. It's a part of the same process that goes on. It's very different from the concept of digital inking, from a traditional inking. Sorry.
Yeah, because I've noticed in some of the Star Wars comics I've been reading and things, it does often say, blah 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 penciler, blah 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 inker, but in some of the newer ones it says, or if you read them digitally, because I've got all the canon Star Wars comics, but normally when I read them once, I'm like, okay, seal that away, put that over there, then I get my Marvel Unlimited and get to scroll through all of the things digitally. It's just a bit easier when I'm making podcasts and stuff. And I notice that sometimes it says, blah 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 artist, blah 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 finishers. And I was like, oh, like finishes and things. And I was like, oh, I see. So it's the final touch is the definition, as you've mentioned it. So that brings a lot of weight to it. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it sounds so cool. It's such a cool thing being able to create things in a visual medium. I mean, it's especially with something like Bounty Hunters, where you've just got so much freedom to be able to do so many things while still being able to kind of play in this world, play in this sandbox in a way. So with that in mind, I know that you've done stuff for IDW, DC, Marvel, and obviously Star Wars is under the Marvel banner, but is there any sort of world that you'd especially love to get into? There's things like Judge Dredd, or there's I know that in Italy you've got a lot of cool comics and things. Is there anything in particular, like a world you'd love to be able to sort of draw, or do you have any of your own ideas of things just out of interest?
Well, of course, I'd love to have a chance one day to work on a series on my own, like a create your own project. That's gonna take a while, I'm afraid. But on the other hand, I think that the one thing that I'd love to do would be to work on some specific characters, superhero characters, because I'd love to work on either the Flash for DC Comics. I love the character, or Spider-Man for Marvel, because they are such iconic characters. I love them. I've read lots of stuff, and I feel very attached to them. I probably feel very scared to do that. A lot of pressure from myself, of course. Besides that, I would love one day to work on a comic book that's a strong horror vibe because I love horror gene, and I never had a really a lot of chances to work on that. And I think it's something that it really fits my art, and I'd love to do something like that one day. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Well, I mean, there are certain elements of Star Wars are getting into horror. I know Cavan Scott, he's doing a lot of horror-esque things with Tales of Vader's Castle and those sort of things. So, get in with Cavan Scott,
Yes.
become besties with him, and then just beg him, because I know
Yes.
he's a massive horror fan. So that would be amazing. And in the same vein,
I already told him we need to do stuff together.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, this is
really
me
cool.
calling out him as well. Like Cavan Scott, let Paolo do some cool, crazy horror stuff, because he's an excellent writer. Your visuals are incredible as well, and just married together, that would be top tier. I'd be buying them. So with that as well, I know we're getting nearer the end here, so we've got a little bit more time, but I wanted to ask, when it comes to being able to do your own characters and things, this is a degree of behind the scenes, but like, because obviously you're working in the realm of Star Wars Marvel, and obviously your resume has been quite a lot, looking at some of the things. Obviously you've done Vader Dark Visions, you did Jedi Fallen Order, Dark Temple was mentioned, you're currently doing Bounty Hunters. Is there, when a new project comes up, I know at the moment you're probably too busy doing Bounty Hunters and things, but before you started doing Bounty Hunters and whatnot, is there like when you've already done work for Marvel, do you kind of just email them and go, do you have anything for me? Or do you go, hey, can I do something involving Darth Vader? Can I do something involving this or involving that? Is there like a way to request things, or is it more just you've got hope?
Well, usually the people that can request specific projects are the top tier artists. They usually have exclusive contracts, so they have kind of a bargaining position, and or maybe they're just lucky. I don't know. Sometimes you just like you write an editor, I'd like to do Darth Vader, and it's like, oh, you know what? I got a project for you. Here, see, just kidding. Nah, never happens. For me, it's actually been the other way around. I knocked at Marvel's door many times. I started with doing tryout pages, and then I started with small stuff, and then I started to work with some specific editors, and since we worked together well, I think they trusted me, and they decided that I was fit for some projects. And this is how I ended up in Star Wars. I had already worked on Lando, and then I did the Fallen Order series. And at some point, I was talking with my editors, and we were actually going to meet at New York Comic Con. So when we met, they were like, "Okay, we have a new project for you. Are you interested?" And I was, "I'm in." They pitched me. Actually, Ethan as well was there. So they pitched me Bounty Hunters, and I was like, okay, count me in. But I hope one day I can go there and just ask for another Darth Vader story.
Yeah, just put that, demand it, say, well, I want to draw two things, Han Solo and Darth Vader. That's it. Any stories with them? Because I know from a previous podcast, like Han Solo's like your favorite Star Wars character, which is good choice there. And obviously with Darth Vader, you said in, I think, the same conversation that you really enjoy drawing Darth Vader as well. And I always find that, Darth Vader Dark Visions, the one that you did number one, that was excellent as well. And I think that as a character, Darth Vader's so interesting in comic format, because for someone that has no expressions, it's really down to the artist to really be able to articulate how he's feeling about things just by body language, which I think is a very underestimated and undervalued thing from a lot of people who aren't maybe in that realm. So with that, like, I know we're getting towards the end here and things, but I want to ask, when it comes to drawing, is there anything that you really don't like drawing, in a sense of when it comes up, you're like, oh, because I know, for example, certain artists, they don't like drawing faces because eyes and expressions can be quite difficult, whereas other people are like, drawing fight scenes is a bit more difficult. I don't know if there's any one thing that occasionally you're like, oh, I have to do this now.
Well, it's definitely I hate drawing horses.
Horses?
Well, I think that's one form. Yeah, they are a nightmare. You have to. You spend years studying human anatomy, and at some point they come up with this crazy idea of a horse, plus some stuff that has a completely different anatomy for what you studied, and you have to draw it. And I'm like, no way. It's gonna be an alien stuff. I'm not drawing any horses. No. Okay. Besides horses, because any animal is hard. Horses are. I found them particularly hard because you have to have human interacting with them very closely, because you have to ride yours, and so they're very annoying. Besides that, I think the other thing that I really hate drawing, and it happens all the time. Thank you, Ethan. Is crowds. We get lots of crowds, and I like. Oh my god! At some point, you start running out of ideas for alien stuff to draw in the background. That's a tricky one.
That must be part of the fun, though, of Star Wars in some way, because unlike, if you had to draw crowds in, like, Spider-Man, for example, basically everyone has to be a person. That's generally how it is. Whereas at least in Star Wars, it's like, if I draw this and that person looks a bit weird, it's not because I'm a bad artist or I didn't have time. He's a new species. So you've kind of got that freedom.
Colorist, do it blue, please.
Exactly. I didn't draw his eye badly. He's meant to look like that. So what do you do, like, outside of, obviously, illustrations and things is your passion, obviously, and that's something, obviously, you've built a career on, and it's so interesting hearing that you have got qualification in economics, and you're a comic artist. That's excellent. But what do you, aside from drawing and things, is there anything that you like doing as a general hobby, or things that aren't specifically to do with drawing?
Well, I like sports, video games. So that's an easy one. Like 90% of the people in Europe, and I particularly love all the video games from the Dark Souls franchise and Bloodborne and similar. They help me get rid of a lot of stress. And besides that, yes, dying. And besides that, I also love to play Warhammer, which is a great. It's such a fun hobby for me. I love both the part of playing the game, so getting together with friends and playing some Warhammer. Also the part of painting and converting miniatures. That's so relaxing. The problem is that I don't have enough time for that. I wish I had enough time. Usually when I get to finish my army, they got so bad because it's been the routes have been out so long, and so I have to move on something else. That's a great hobby that really helps get rid of stress.
I can imagine. And it's like your own, you've got no one telling you what to do or how to do things. You can go, I'm going to make this little guy have green armor, and I can just go at my own pace and things. Because I've got a few friends who love Warhammer. And, I'm in the, nerdy realm in essence. So I'm aware of it all. It's just one of those things. It's like, if I had unlimited time, unlimited money, and no job, I would definitely be involved in that sort of thing. But it's like, I can only do so much with my time.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And it's with you saying, like, with Dark Souls and things, it's saying that Dark Souls relaxes you is quite funny, because obviously it's so difficult when you're dying all the time. But I know you say that in jest. It's like that must be great for horror. Like your influence of wanting to do horror. It's like you must get so many great ideas from the Dark Souls and Bloodborne and things, because some of the sprites and the images in there is phenomenal. Some of the bosses, you're like, how did someone think of that? Like, what is that being coming at me?
I played Dark Souls the very first time, while Dark Souls 2 was out, and I got interested because everyone was talking about it, and I was like, okay, I've never played this series, I don't know anything about it. I'm just gonna get the first game and play it, and I was like blown away. I had no idea what it was getting into, and so the very first time you see this horrible boss coming towards you, it's a dragon. No, it completely flips and it's just a gaping mouth with full, and you're like, oh, I'm not gonna beat that. It was pure horror. It was incredible. and I think it's a great franchise for that. It gets you the very feeling. It actually fucks you a lot because it gives you the feeling from the very start that you cannot make it. And that's half of the power of the game. If you think you cannot beat that boss or that enemy, you're not going to make it because you got so much pressure. And then you got the music, and then you got the sounds, and you're like, okay, I'm not going to make it. So it's crazy good. I love it. And I think it relaxes me because I just switch off all my problems and I completely focus on the game. And even if I'm not like playing 20 hours a day. Sometimes I play a couple of hours if I have a chance. So it's just a good way to get rid of a word side and focusing on something different, even if it means swearing a lot at the video game.
Awesome. Well, I'll ask you just the last sort of question here, and then I'll let you get back to your day. Thank you so much for your time and things. I wanted to just ask, generally speaking, obviously you can't tell us about things that are coming up in the future, but when you're working on something, how far in advance is that normally? So, with obviously Bounty Hunters at the moment coming out is like issues 16, 17, I think around that realm. And I presume you're on probably issue 20 or something onwards. Is it just a vague idea? How many months in advance are you working on things before they release on average?
So on a comic book project, you usually start on the first issue about 6 months before the actual release, because the idea is that you have to be doing the 3 issues after. You have to have those 3 issues already done by the time the first issue comes out. Right. So you're actually finishing number 4 when number 1 is out, and but that's for general series and stuff. When it comes to a regular series, of course, that window of times gets narrower and narrower because you work, of course, you don't have like a single month to do a comic book. You have like a month and a half, and then you have to do colors and lettering and stuff and corrections. Then Lucas comes and say, "Oh, you used the wrong character. Go back to art." And yeah, and this is the reason why you have to get other artists to fill in while so you can manage to get some extra time. And so it's usually about 3 issues. You're always working on 3 issues later, besides from what is actually on the shelves. So I'm actually working on issue 20. I'm nearly done, and if in case any editor is watching me, issue 16 is been out for a while. I think issue 17 is going to be out very soon.
Yeah.
So that's basically the main idea. Unless you're working on a create your own, in that case you can make your own rules, and you can get after like 10, 12 issues, you're like, okay, I'm gonna take a break. Or maybe you're going to say, okay, the next issue is going to be in 2 months. So it gets bi-monthly from that moment on, and it's easier. There are some series that are actually bi-weekly, and I heard some crazy stories about those, and it's usually, those issues are usually featuring many artists, because they have to it's impossible for a single artist to keep up with a bi-weekly series unless you have like 10, 12 issues already done by the time issue 1 gets out. It's crazy otherwise.
Yeah, it's amazing. But, Paolo, thank you so much for coming on the show and giving all of my audience, a look of what it's like being a comic book artist, because it's something that, I've spoken to a couple of authors and things, and although it's always interesting speaking with someone who is, the writer and things, I think you guys are all very undervalued in a sense of how much you actually contribute to the comic realm, especially. Obviously it's a very visual medium, everything is so striking and things, but also especially with something like Star Wars, which is every comic issue, even though you've said before, Bounty Hunters, it's not at the forefront, it's not the most popular Star Wars content, it's normally movies, then series, then probably games, then books, then comics generally. But even with comics, there are so many things that happen in there that affects the canon, like who knows how long afterwards. And it's like the ripple effect in a sense, all the stuff going on with Han Solo and the Bounty Hunter stuff at the moment is incredible. So I want to thank you for that and telling us about some of the information and things. So I just want to say, is there anything final that you wanted to say and anywhere people can find you? Obviously, we connect on Instagram, so I'll include the link to that in the description. I didn't know if there's anywhere else people can find you and if you have any sort of final statements before we finish the call.
Thank you so much for your time, first of all. And so you can find me on social media like Instagram and Twitter. And besides that, what I can say, making comics, it's hard, but you can do it. You just have to work hard, really, really hard. That's the advice I give all the students. The students who don't make it are usually the ones who are not willing to work. I've seen lots of people with great talent, but no will to work hard, getting lost during the years. So you need talent, of course, but you need the will to work. That's it. That's the only advice I can give. Besides the obvious one you can find in any book about anatomy, perspective, and so on.
Aside from maybe don't give yourself too much to do, because I know you said prior you were like doing work for like 2 ongoing series at once, and you were just like had no time at all to be able to do anything. So it's just like have a good work ethic, but not too much of a good work ethic. So you've got nothing else to do.
Yeah, that comes later. That's a different problem for later on when you get the gym.
Oh, wonderful. Cool. Well, this is where I'll stop the call then. But yeah, thank you so much again, Paolo. It's been an absolute delight speaking with you.
My pleasure.